Can or share screen?
You could wait till Prabhu gives the introduction.
Yes.
Okay.
Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to BhagavatSanga program. This is our program where each week devotees read a particular set of prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam and share their realizations. We are continuing the theme of the prayers of Sukhdev Goswami. The reference for these prayers is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, verses 12 to 23. We have wonderful devotees presenting today. Umesh Prabhu, Neha mataji, and Mira. Thank you, Umesh Prabhu, Neha mataji, for accepting this service, and looking forward to your class. Hare Krishna, and over to you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Can you see my screen, Prabhuji?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay. Yeah,
First of all, we'd like to thank Prashant Prabhu. I think life is crazy busy on all sides, and if he was not insisting, we would not be reading the chapter and presenting. So thank you so much,
Thank you,
Prashant
Prabhuji.
Prabhu. That was a big spiritual push to do the reading, and we enjoyed when we read it. We would also like to take this opportunity to thank Jai Sabhadra Mataji and Satyasara Prabhu. I think our biggest takeaway from this chapter, and especially the prayers of Sukhdev Goswami ji, is that how we should always take enough time to thank Krishna, to thank our acharyas, and thank Prabhupada ji. More time than kind of learning about the meanings of the verses, because that sets us in the mood to absorb this complex knowledge. To be very frank, when we read this chapter, everything went above our head. We were not understanding. Then we took read some videos from some Prabhujis. Of course, did pranams to Satyasara Prabhu so that we can gather the courage to understand. So we would want to thank Guru Prabhupada and our Guru to be able to give us the ability to understand this chapter and then be able to present. Since we are in our lifetime only reading the first canto of Bhagavatam, it would be humbly obvious to say that we will make mistakes in our realization because we are just reading bits and pieces. We are still reading Bhagavatam's first canto, and this topic is from the second canto. That means we haven't understood the full message. So if we make mistake, please forgive us. And I think handing over to Neha so that we can start with Guru Pranamas. And if you can set the context, Neha.
Yes. So we will start with Guru Pranam. Om Ajnana Timrandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namah. Which is, I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master who has opened my eyes which were blinded by darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of knowledge. Then we will do Srila Prabhupada Pranati. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarini. Our respectful obeisances are unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami. You are kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Dev and delivering the Western countries which were filled with impersonalism and voidism. Now, I would like to thank Prashant Prabhu, Satyasara Prabhuji, and Subhadra Mataji for giving this opportunity to us to present this presentation. We will start with the Canto 2, Chapter 4, Process of Creation. So, setting the context, Sukhdev Goswami was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit on the bank of Ganga. At the end of first canto, Parikshit Maharaj asked Sukhdev Goswami, what should be the duty of a dying man, as he received the warning that he will die in 7 days, as he was cursed. First 3 chapters of Canto 2 answers his questions, and in the 4th chapter, Parikshit Maharaj is having a conversation with Sukhdev Goswami on his response, and the mood in which one should be ready to hear about the greatness of Lord Shri Krishna. Sutta Goswami was also present in the audience, and later he recited Srimad Bhagavatam to sages of Sharanya. Now, Umesh will go with who was Parikshit Maharaj.
Yes, let's also glorify Parikshit Maharaj. I know we all know who was he, but let's glorify. Maharaj was an emperor of the whole world, but he received the warning that he is dying. He renounced everything, his kingdom, wives, sons, and everything that attaches himself to the material world. As I was thinking about this, unfortunately, we are not such fortunate to receive such warnings, but we all know life is unpredictable, and that means that can we predict how long we will stay, or how long I will stay, Neha will say no. So I think, and nor will get the warning, which means that we should be allowing us to detach ourselves in service to Krishna. That is important, because when Parikshit Maharaj did it, he was fully ready to absorb the message of Bhagavatam. So when we have a material entanglements, they will distract us away from absorbing the full message. And I think the first thing is to develop that readiness to absorb. Let's also remember that Parikshit Maharaj was also born to Uttara, and he was protected by the Lord right from the womb of his mother. That's why I think, don't our parents and our grandparents and especially our gurus say that read more when you're carrying a child? In our case, because Neha is carrying a child, I can relate to it more, that reading right from the mom's, when the baby is in mom's womb, is super important, because the consciousness is developed then, and then there is a chance that we all can be a pure devotee, and the newborn can be a pure devotee. Through his inquiries, Parikshit Maharaj is also teaching the devotees that one should know the greatness of the Lord so that we can develop full faith. And I think there are examples in the YouTube video of the Maharaj that we were listening to. And also Satyasara Prabhu gives examples many times in his class, that we need to develop faith to advance in bhakti. And faith is developed, how do we develop faith that one country is stronger than the other, or I am stronger than the other? By knowing more about that country, or knowing more about that person. Same way, I think knowing more about the Lord and his greatness, one can develop faith. Without full faith, it is impossible to generate bhakti bhav. Learning is, that's why I think the learning is, sadhaka should not only be hearing about Vrindavan pastimes, but also hear about the Purusha avatar pastimes, so that faith can be developed. Parikshit Maharaj is also inquiring. So this is now, I think, the 4th chapter, wherein Parikshit Maharaj is coming back and submissively inquiring to Goswami, please tell me how the Lord creates through his Maya Shakti. And it talks about the Sarga creation or the Visarga creation, the primary or the secondary creation. Primary being creation by the Vishnu, and secondary being Brahma's creation, which are all of us. Second question he also asks, how Lord performs activities in the world through Chit Shakti. This is the Vrindavan pastimes. Here in the purport, Prabhupada also says that Parikshit Maharaj is not jumping into knowing about Vrindavan Leela. He first wants to know the greatness of the Lord for Krishna. Parikshit Maharaj knew it from the womb's mother, and he's born to a great devotee. But it is for us that he's asking these questions. Before responding to Parikshit Maharaj's questions, Sukhdev Goswami asks, Why are you asking me this? Then Maharaj glorifies Goswami as you have spotless devotion, spotless knowledge. That's why I'm asking you. He also says that you're as good as the personality of Godhead, and there's a learning for us here that devotees of the Lord are even more powerful by the grace of the Lord than the Lord himself. An example given is Hanumanji. He could cross the ocean by flying. Ramji couldn't, but because Ramji enabled him to do that. And that's why worshipping such a pure devotee is a step in the process of Krishna consciousness. Then Sukhdev Goswami offers prayers to the Lordship through 12 and 24 verse so that Lord can be pleased and award him benediction to speak about him. So what to speak about us? Sukhdev Goswami, such a learned soul and a sage, is offering prayers from 12 to 24, which is the topic of today's presentation as well. Going forward, and Neha, do you want to take that?
So what is Sarga and what is Visarga? As Umesh said, that primary and the secondary creation. Primary creation is done by Karandakshay Vishnu and Mahavishnu. Secondary creation is done by Brahma. So Krishna is not dependent on anyone. Like he doesn't need Brahmaji to create anything for himself, but Krishna, he did his creation through Brahma. Mahavishnu creates everything by himself. First people who came for creation, like after creation through Brahmaji, were four Kumaras. But in that story, as you know, Umesh, you want to say something?
Yeah, you completed.
Yeah, they didn't follow Brahmaji's instructions.
So I think there is a learning there,
Yeah.
right? We are in this Kali Yuga and we talk about miseries. The miseries impact us more because we ignore the instructions of the Vedic scriptures, of our Guru, and we end up in four Kumaras situation, which we would want to avoid.
Now, who is a pure devotee? So, whole idea of Vedic study is to draw one attention to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. What is required to become a pure devotee is one should be given a chance to be born in a family of devotee. It is like Parikshit Maharaj, who was protected by Krishna. And second, we should always have blessings of a spiritual master. Nature of bhakti to Lord is detachment and knowledge develops on its own. Prabhupada ji also, many times he did not focus on renunciation. He always focused on A, B, C, D. That is, A is association of devotees, B is reading books, C is chanting 16 round at least, D is eating prasadam.
And if I can add here, remember I remember in childhood days, if people talk about bhakti, and some of the people will talk about you would have to renounce, and that's why I wait for your retirement to develop bhakti. I think Prabhupada made it easy for at that time younger people like me that no, renunciation is not the only way. If we can associate with good people, devotees, read books which are developing our consciousness, not degrading our consciousness, chant so that we keep that process going for years together and eat Krishna prasadam, we can develop pure bhakti and we can still be in this material world for layman's matter.
And by following four regulative principles too.
I think this is some notes we took and we cannot clean and present it, so our apologies, but I think there's some important realizations here. Why Sukhdev Goswami has to offer prayers, and in this YouTube video that we were talking, he gives an example of nowadays people are so intolerant and not patient, all of us, that even before a question is asked and completely asked, we jump in with answers, right? We are the experts of everything. We are generalists who know everything is the approach nowadays. We don't calm down, stop hurrying and offer prayers, which increases absorption. And that's why when we started this, we said, okay, we learned that we should continue to thank and show gratitude to devotees, to Guru and Guru Parampara, so that we are ready to observe and that we are not impatiently reacting. Dependence on Guru and Krishna will increase when we actually wait to answer And I think the YouTube video also talks about, it's not about you asking them to hold off and chanting the Guru mantra. It's about closing your eyes or being able to just thank before you answer. And I think I take Satyasara Prabhu's teaching. He told us every time we are making a material decision, just say Om Tat Sat. That is offering prayers to Lord, to Krishna, that I'm making this decision. Make sure this decision is not making me away or taking me away from your path. uh, no one is free to act freely and independently is our learning from this slide.
Now we will go with the prayers. We will start with 12 shloka. Shri Shuka Uvacha Nama Parasmai Purusha Bhuyashe Sad Udbhava Sthana Nirodha Lilaya Greta Shakti Tritaya Dehinam Antarbhavayanupalaksha Vartmani. Translation. Sukhdev Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto Supreme Personality of Godhead, who for the creation of the material world accept the three modes of nature. He is the complete whole, residing within the body of everyone, and his ways are inconceivable." Umesh, you want to go? Okay, I can come on. This material world is a manifestation of three modes, as we know: goodness, passion, and ignorance. And the Supreme Lord, for the creation, maintenance, and destruction of the material world, accept three predominating forms as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. As Vishnu, he enters into every body materially created. As Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, he enters into every universe. And Shirodakshaya Vishnu, he enters into the body of every living being. Our realization is that this is also another proof that Krishna is in every living being. And by constantly remembering this, we can develop genuine compassion and love for every human being, including devotees. 13 shloka. Bhuyo nama satvrijna shide satam asambhavaya kila sattvamurtaye pumsham puna param hamsya ashrame vyavastitam tanam anumragya dashushe. Translation. I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. Umesh, you want to go?
So in this a mix of realization and something from Prabhupadaji's purports, that it is said in this word that the Lord is the liberator of devotees, but he also is one who can destroy atheistic tendencies, so much prevalent in Western world. Uh, and I think this verse, and Prabhupada also talks about that Paramhansa stage is not the Himalayan task that we understand it to be with the lack of knowledge. Rather, bhakti yoga, if developed within, can take us to that factual Paramhansa stage wherein we always surrender ourselves, think about the Lord. So it's not as monumental a task as some other, as we think of it to be.
14 shloka. Namo namaste stva rasabhaya sattvatam vidhurakashtaya muhu kuyuginam nirashta samyati shanya radhasha swadamni brahmani ramsayate namaha. Translation. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is the associate of the members of the Yadu dynasty, who is always a problem for the non-devotees. He is the supreme enjoyer of both material and spiritual worlds, yet he enjoys his own abode in the spiritual sky. There is no one equal to him because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. Realization. Krishna is on our side when we are in the path of bhakti and will be the problem solver or give us the strength to go through problems. But for non-devotees, he is himself the problem because he will act to liberate them. 15 shloka. Yat kirtanam yat smaram yat ikshnam यत् वन्दनं यत् श्रवणं यत् अहर्णं लोकस्यात् सद्यो विधुनोति कल्मषं तस्मै सुभद्राश्रवसे नमो नमः. Which translation you want to?
Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all auspicious Lord Shri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrance, audience, prayers, hearing, and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of performer. Kirtanam, or glorifying the Lord, can be performed in many ways, such as remembering, visiting temples, offering prayers in front of the Lord, and hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord, like we're doing today, mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. Kirtanam can be performed both by singing glories of the Lord in accompaniment with melodious music and by recitation of the scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. Our realization, we human beings are great in limiting ourselves or boxing ourselves to do less. The same approach we bring to bhakti sometimes, wherein we may box ourselves in service we do by saying, my service is to clean bathroom, for example. So I'll restrict myself to that because that's my service. But here in this verse, it is clearly mentioned that we can do anything and everything and offer everything we got to serve Krishna, so that we are naturally all the time thinking about him, uh, so that we don't limit ourselves. Let's do offer our hands, legs, our mind, our singing abilities, speaking abilities, uh, everything for Krishna if we can, whatever our body allows us to.
Shloka 16. Vichakshana charanopashantanath sangam vyudasya bhayatyo nitar atma vindati hi brahma gatim gatash klamash tasmai subhadra shravase namo namaha.
Let me offer my respectful obeisances again and again unto the all auspicious Lord Shri Krishna, the highly intellectual, simply by surrendering onto his feet, are relieved of all the attachments to the present and the future existences, and without difficulty progress towards spiritual existence. Realization. We should surrender without logic and without conditions to our Guru and Krishna, so that we can be relieved from attachment, without which there is no possibility of being ready to develop faith and devotion in Krishna.
17 shloka. Tapasvino dana para yashashvino manashvino mantra vidha sumangala shemam na vindanti vena yad arpanam tasmai subhadra shravase namo namaha.
Translation. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all auspicious Lord Shri Krishna again and again, because the great learned sages, the great performers of charity, the great workers of distinction, the great philosopher and mystics, the great chanters of the Vedic hymns, and the great followers of the Vedic principle cannot achieve any fruitful result without dedication of such great qualities to the service of the Lord. Realization. Here it is clearly mentioned that if we read scriptures, chant mantras, or do rituals for the sake of doing it and not do it in relation to Supreme Lord, then we run the risk of not developing bhakti. That is why it is important that we are reading, chanting, and that we are performing rituals with rapt attention and focus, and that we attempt to understand them so that we can internalize the reasons why we are doing it, to develop bhakti and to please Krishna, so that we can be liberated of our miseries and we can navigate this world.
18 shloka. Kirata hunandra pulinda pulkasha abhira shumbha yavana khashadaya yenai cha papa yad aparashya yashraya sudhyanti tasmai prabhavishvanev namaha.
Translation. Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Puliska, Abhira, Sumba, Yavana, members of Khasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Realization. This verse clearly tells us that even the most sinful person can get purified by offering obeisances to the Lord. So there is no excuse for anyone, including all of us, to find fault in themselves or find fault with others. and distract one and others from the process of bhakti. This verse also tells us that instead of being intolerant or discriminating amongst human beings, we should rather keep trying until we die to imbibe bhakti in ourselves and in others.
19 shloka. Sa esha atmatmavatam adishwarash trayimayo dharmamam Dharmamam maya gatavyaklikir aja shankrati vitarkya lingo bhagavan prasiddhatam. Translation: He is the super soul and the supreme lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures, and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Shiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that supreme absolute be pleased with me. Realization: There is no question that Lord Krishna is supreme. So instead of wasting our life in proving who is supreme and who is not, we should rather spend our time in developing deep faith and devotion in Supreme so he can be pleased with us. We should also gently preach this message to everyone, not by enforcing, but by introducing them to various scriptures which restate Krishna is supreme and by talking about Krishna's greatness and his pastimes. When bhakti and faith develops, logic will take backseat. That will also be a good indication that the process of bhakti has started. 20 shloka. Shriyapatir yagnapati prajapatir dhiyampatir lokapatir dharapate pati patir gatish chandaka rishni satvatam prasiddhatam me bhagwan satam pati. Umesh, you want to go?
Yeah. May Lord Krishna, who is the worshipful Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andhaka and Rishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddess of fortune, the director of all sacrifices, and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. Realization: we all hear this young phrase, right? May the force be with you. What is that force? It is not that fictional cartoon characters. Of course, no. It is the all powerful Lord Krishna, who is worshipable Lord for all devotees, husbands of all goddess of fortune, directors of all sacrifices, controller of the intelligence, clearly said, and he's the Pati Pati. He's the Pati of everyone. Um, He's the supreme Pati. Members of Yadu knew Krishna is everything. Yadu was finished by will of the god, not because they were conditioned. But Lord and Yadu, sorry, but Lord and Yadu is all eternal, were all eternal associates. Lord is the guide for all devotees. May Supreme Lord, who is the protector, be merciful to me, else we all know what happened to Hiranyakashipu. Here it says that he's everything. Your intelligence is not your intelligence, it's the Lord's intelligence, and hence we should surrender so that we don't see his wrath, rather we see his love towards us. Prashant Prabhu, we are a bit late on time. Is that okay? We're finishing up.
Yes, Prabhu, you can go maybe a couple minutes.
Thank
Okay,
you,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Yadangri abhithayaya samadhi dotya diyanu pashyanti hi tatvam atmana vadanti chetat kavayo yatha jucham same mukundo bhagavan prasiddhatam. Translation: It is the personality of Goddess Sri Krishna who gives liberation. By thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotee in trance can see that absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. our realization. It is impossible to think about Krishna every second without integrating every activity of our life in given day as offering to Krishna. We should not be creating multiple slows in life, say material life, job life, temple life, Sunday life, as it will then just leave our spiritual activities to mundane just for the sake of activities. Surrender happens when everything we do is for Krishna, by Krishna and to Krishna. Then only we will have his mercy for liberation. 22nd shloka. Prachodita yena pura saraswati vitanvata jasya satim smritim hidi swalakshna pradur bhut kilashyata same rishnam rishabha prasaditam. Translation. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Our realization. May the Lord help me generate more love toward Vedic knowledge so I can learn and engage our senses in Krishna service in this lifetime only, and so that I don't procrastinate and wait for the next time to read Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, or next year or next lifetime. 23rd shloka. Bhute mahatpeya imam puro vibhur nirmaya shete yadamushu purshaha punkte gunan sodasha sodashtmaka so lankrishishta bhagavan vacham shime.
May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who, in his Purusha incarnation, causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are the generator, be pleased to decorate my statement. Realization. May the Supreme Lord, who enlightens our material body, who is the Purusha incarnation, be pleased to decorate my words invoking Madhurya and other rasas. Rasas are important, they bring bhav and then amplify it. If mercy happens, we'll chant and preach by invoking all the rasas, which will please the Lord. So I think instead of reading scriptures, which sometimes when we start, we do like newspaper, let's read as if by generating that love bhav and the madhurya rasa, as if we are in that age or in association with Krishna, so that his mercy happens to us. Last, and we'll do it quickly. So
Namastasme bhagavate vasudevaya vedashe papo jnanamayam samya yanmukham buruhashvanam.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus like the mouth of the Lord. Realization. I offer my namaskar to Vyasadeva, incarnation of Vasudeva, who wrote Vedic scriptures, and which is like nectar we should be drinking daily. Means let's make it a habit to read from scriptures even one verse daily. And we both are currently preaching because we read, but it's not daily. We have gotten to at least chanting daily, and hopefully we'll get that realization to at least read one verse daily, which we were doing when Meera was born. So this is our prayers to you all, so that we be able to read a verse daily. That will be a good start. Thank you so much. And if you made any mistakes, please forgive us.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Umesh Prabhu, Neha mataji. Wonderful presentation, and I really liked all your realizations. I really liked how you started with the whole concept of the prayers, which is the importance of thanking Krishna for everything and thanking Guru Parampara. And you talked about the background of Parikshit Maharaj and the uncertainty of life, the importance of being Krishna consciousness because of that uncertainty. And I really liked you talked about how it's important to read, especially because it helps develop consciousness, even develop consciousness in the womb. So and that reading will help us develop faith, and then through developing faith we can hopefully develop bhakti, and without faith we can't develop bhakti. We also talked about who is a pure devotee, why Sukhdev Goswami is offering the prayers, and the importance of, thanking the Lord again there instead of being, impatient to answer. How Krishna is in everything, and how we should, because Krishna is in everything, we should develop love and compassion for everyone. That Krishna is always on our side if we are on the path of bhakti. And I really like the point where you said, you should do all services with full attention and understand why. And the why is to please Krishna. We shouldn't do any fault finding. And I really like Mataji's point about, instead of wasting our life on proving who is supreme, we already know that Krishna is supreme. So we should spend time developing bhakti and faith. And finally at the end you talked about how we should integrate Krishna in every aspect of our life. We should pray to the Lord to help us read, to develop love for Vedic knowledge, and that the key is reading. So thank you so much, Mataji, Prabhuji, for sharing your realizations. Your service is very inspiring for me, especially, there's so many Janmashtami preparations that are going on, and you still found so much time to read and glorify the Lord, and you're setting an example for all of us. So thank you, Prabhuji, Mataji. With that, devotees, we will end the program here. My apologies for starting a few minutes late. And Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you. We will see you next.